Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. It's your host, Street Urchin.
Not to hurt your feelings.
Waking up to another fine morning. God, I miss coffee. It seems we're on a steady cruise to over 300 subscribers. Another thank you to everyone that is sticking around to hear my nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, my 2 whole Patreon subscribers had a request for today's video.
Feet.
So, on my next video, you want to see feet.
Yep, that's the request.
So here are my, comically misshapen feet. Getting too old for this. And yes, my shoes are clown-like in nature when I'm wearing skinny jeans. Thankfully, I've changed most of my clothing to pajama-related attire. Because...
You suck, you jackass.
Anyways, on to today's video, which actually came as a shock to me when it was suggested. Has anyone else heard of people confusing ISFJs with INFJs? Is it people mistyping ISFJs as INFJs? Is anyone unsure of how to distinguish between the two? Does no one watch my cognitive function video? All valid questions, of course. And hopefully I'll be able to help you spot some differences. And to put to rest once and for all, no, your supervisor at the Target is not an INFJ.
Wrong again, idiot!
Go stalk them on an MBTI dating website or something. Although, if you've made the mistake of confusing the two, an incredibly simplistic clue to tell you the difference, an INFJ is significantly less cranky than the ISFJ, as the former isn't plagued with the memories of every painful interaction between them and an idiot with an opinion. Unfortunately, as I slide into old age, introverted sensing has become more of a gangrenous screwdriver-sized pain in my left ass cheek. I actually have a funny story about that for another time. But since you're an MBTI enthusiast, we'll skip past the functions they have in common and focus on the ones they don't. Most important two being introverted intuition and introverted sensing. As I am someone who applies practical MBTI, I'm always on the lookout for cognitive function use in reality. Although I have my own theories on the thought processes or magical powers of each personality type, I attempt to keep my findings focused on things that you can relate to. Your typical ESFP, for example, won't be able to shut up more often than not, mostly inject their personal opinion, and has a range of conversational topics best described as shallow. I imagine many of you have at least one person in mind when you heard that.
Street Urchin's mind freak.
So in what ways will you be able to identify the key differences between INFJ and ISFJ? But before all that business, I want to touch on rarity. For the past 10 years, I've had people tell me they know several INFJs out in the real world. In a particular case, someone told me they and 4 of their childhood friends were INFJ. Off. INFJs are supposed to make up 1.5% of the US population, which means, statistically, if you're at a party of 100 people, 1.5 of them could be INFJ. The other half is floating in the punch bowl next to the lemon wedge. On the other hand, ISFJs supposedly make up approximately 13.8% of the US population. So when you're at the barbecue, and the quiet but sociable girl looks at you like she's studying a wild animal, don't assume it's an INFJ imagining how you can benefit her in a relationship. Assume it's an ISFJ trying to decide if A, you're drunk, or B, mentally ill when you bring up the topic of global conspiracy theories. If you're an ENTP, probably both. In my oh-so-humble opinion, the easiest way to figure out which is which, look for signs of introverted sensing. But Street Urchin, I can't be bothered to take the 30 seconds out of my life to read the cognitive function definitions off the official website. How can I tell what introverted sensing looks like? Don't worry, my hypothetical Redditor. To a person with a strong preference for it, SI will present as a strong inclination for memory. These walking video cameras have a bent for reliving past experiences over and over. Even more so in the case of the ISFJ. So besides the fact that they have their RBF on lock, their strongest mode of conversation is pressing the playback button and talking to you about how their day was, with a strange level of detail that would take you a fistful of Ritalin to emulate. And they're incredibly unlikely to show interest in anything conceptual, or outside of what is considered to be normal interests, unless they grew up in a house or went to school packed full of intuitive types. Once again, unlikely. Next up, contemporary fashion. This one is a little bit trickier, and you're gonna have to put on the old thinking cap. Obviously, to someone so engrossed in their own memories, they are heavily influenced by their tradition. I know some of you immediately thought of your own traditions growing up. In the US, traditionally dressed usually means reserved, possibly formal. What I mean is that ISFJ's personal tradition, where they grew up, what they did for fun, what drugs were in style, etc., etc. An ISFJ from high society is gonna dress differently from the one that grew up in the slums. So if the person in question wears some pretty normal clothes, hair is done in a regular fashion, standard accessories, maybe tattoos if it's normal where they came from, then you should put down a point for introverted sensing. It's not to say that an INFJ won't come out and try to blend in once in a while, but INFJs have their own style or a twist on the contemporary. They generally don't go out looking to be eye-catchingly weird, but they typically enjoy bringing a more eclectic style to their appearance. And finally, to give some contrast to the functions, in case you'd gotten bored of talking about normie functions, we'll take a look at how introverted intuition will present for the INFJ out in the wild. The INFJ is significantly more ambitious than the ISFJ. A modern-day version will likely be on their way or currently in a career. This can include attending advanced education, typically college. Grades will have been very important to them, as it would be for any introverted intuitive with 2 functioning brain cells. So if they have a good career, high grades, etc., you could safely put a point towards introverted intuition. As mentioned before, they do like to dress in ways that have a more personal influence. When it comes to conversation, you can easily explore ideas that don't necessarily fit into the mainstream. Science, magic, fantasy, MBTI, an INFJ can show an active interest in any of those topics, so long as they have time to discuss them, as they do have somewhat of a schedule to keep if they want to retire by 48. Alright, so those were some quick tips on diagnosing either ISFJ or INFJ on the go. I could go into further detail, but most people's attention span these days doesn't last any longer than 5 minutes, and I do this mostly for free. Speaking of which, I'd like to shill for my Patreon and Discord servers. I have links to both down below, so if you have a couple bucks to spare, I'd greatly appreciate it. Helps keep your favorite urchin on YouTube, instead of OnlyFans. If I did both, would that help my channel? Anyways, that's all the time I've got for this video. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!